Can you tell me about how you met Emet and your friendship?
Yeah. Beginning in 2017, I began working at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College in Reconstructing Judaism on my first job out of college. Through being in that space and then in maybe 2018 joining, if not now, beginning to immerse myself in Jewish Philly. I met kind of through those different realms. Most frequently, I guess, because we were in the same building of RRC. I think that I'm very honored to be asked to be interviewed for this oral history project. I also feel really, really lucky to have gotten to be a part of the community of care.
What was the first way that you were involved in the network of care? Like, what was the first thing that you did?
Yeah. I remember Emet posting on social media about his choice to end medical care for himself. And then I remember shortly after seeing that I was added to a Facebook group that had this big spreadsheet in it. And I remember looking at the spreadsheet and wondering if and how I would be a part of this.
And what was the first way that you found yourself helping?
I remember going to the hospice at least a few times to be there kind of in company with different people, with different friends. And I remember us just hanging out at the hospice. There wasn't an activity per se. What I remember is presence. I remember just being there and there being this call for people to just come by and be there and hang out. That's one thing I remember. The living funeral, being part of this circle in this space. And then I have one really distinct memory about the night that I stayed with Emet. So I remember really wanting to stay overnight. And I also remember thinking, I've never done this kind of care work before. And basically, I was really nervous that I would do something wrong. I remember calling Daniel and saying, in this kind of very vulnerable moment, I really want to come and help for the night and stay overnight with Emet, but I'm scared. Can you kind of walk me through what happens when you stay? And Daniel on the phone with me talked me through all these different things. Emet might ask for ice. You might have to walk Roxy. The nurse might come in. Here's where you sleep. Here's where you should walk Roxy. Here's these things that you can do. Here's these things that you should not do. And kind of gave a map to guide me. And then I remember going and staying the night with Emet after that conversation. And I did all those things. I gave him ice and I walked Roxy and the nurse came in. I think it was also like in the middle of the week, like on a Tuesday, and I was working full time. So I remember also having to get up very early to walk Roxy past all these school children.
And so when you walk into hospice, can you tell me, like, what does it look like?
I remember that there was this sense of calm in this space, this sense of calm inevitability. Like I didn't really see anyone screaming or crying or running the way that it sometimes feels like you would imagine a hospital feeling. Everyone just moved kind of slowly because of the inevitable sense of where you were.
And when you walk into Emet's room, what does it look like? What do you notice?
It looked like no hospice room I could imagine. It was covered in banners and posters and decorations and gay paraphernalia. And I remember Emet in the bed with Roxy beside him or on him or at his feet. And I remember people scattered on the edge of the room kind of doing their own thing, texting, chilling, talking. They were at home almost.
Who knew that hospice could mean hospitality?
Mm,
And that someone who was dying could be the one to offer that.
yeah, that makes sense to me because I think there's also an invitation into slowness and presence.
Spaciousness.
Yeah. 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 I remember thinking at the time that this was like nothing I would ever experience in my life.
So it was a new experience for you.
It was a new experience. And I also remember thinking that, much like I'm sure other people have spoken to, that this was such an outpouring of community care, and it really made visible what queer family looked like and what queer family care looked like and what intentional dying looked like from someone who had a lot of imagination to make his dying what he wanted it to be. And I think that I have not experienced in my life yet that kind of intention in choosing what your dying looks like. I knew a lot of the people who were there because of working for the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College and being an If Not Now. Maybe one of my first interactions with queer and trans family, or thinking about family in a different way, or thinking about family taking care of someone.
What was that like to have you, like your first experience of queer family taking care of someone?
It was messy. It was messy to watch people wrestle with their feelings of pain and obligation and love in a way that transcended friendship and transcended community and moved into the realm of family.
You mentioned that you knew a lot of the people there because of your work at Reconstructing Judaism and from If Not Now. How did the skills of the and training of the people there make that space possible?
Because I was fairly involved with If Not Now at the time, I could really see how organizing frameworks emerged, in that people were rallying and organizing other people to get involved and to take on roles. And even the conversation that me and Daniel had felt almost like this one-on-one conversation, right? Of, I want to get involved, but I'm scared. I want to get involved, but I don't know how. I want to get involved, but the stakes emotionally feel high. And that to me felt like a kind of, in retrospect, feels like a way of organizing community towards something different than a political campaign, but also not dissimilar. In terms of the pastoral care, I think it's funny now because now I am in that realm. Like, I'm starting CPE chaplaincy internship this summer at a hospice. So I think very differently about it now. But at the time, I think I didn't quite have a sense of what the pastoral care skills that people were bringing, or even if they had them. But I do remember thinking how useful and lucky it was to be surrounded by so many people that were embedded in innovative Jewish ritual, that to have a living funeral and have it be ritualistic was possible, was not only possible, but was beautiful and inspiring. I'm a master's student at Harvard Divinity School, studying religion, ethics, and politics, though I'm probably going to go to rabbinical school.
You think you're going to go to Reconstructing Judaism?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you feel your time with Emet shaped your kind of journey toward pastoral care and the rabbinate?
I think that many different factors have influenced my journey towards the path that I'm on, and being part of the community of care for Emet was one of them. And it just makes me curious about the boldness that I saw from Emet, and what that boldness looks like within myself. This year, I had surgery. I froze my eggs in preparation to start tea. It was really, really hard and a really vulnerable time. I kind of drew inspiration from what I had seen in this community of care to ask for my own community of care around this process. And I remember saying to my therapist, the only thing that I want in this process is for people to accompany me. And he was like, okay, can you ask them to do that? And I was like, no, that seems terrifying and embarrassing. but I did, which I feel very proud of. And I think that this kind of modeling to me what a queer familial network of care looks like in practice, not just in theory, was really demonstrated to me during Emet's passing, such that I could imagine recreating that for myself, even around something that was not the same, but was very painful, and I needed a lot of support.
And were you able to ask for that care that you needed?
Yeah, I was, and it's probably one of the things that I'm most proud of. And I think for me, I'm doing a unit of CPE this summer at a nursing home and hospice care space. And I remember thinking when I applied for it that even if I don't want to become a chaplain, which I don't know that I do, how useful it is to work with people and learn to care for people who are sick and dying.
Like what a holy thing he did in asking for help. When you ask your community for what you need, like that's a holy act, because you're inviting your community, your friends into relationship with you.
Yeah, putting forward the possibility that they might not meet you.
Right. But also giving this profound gift and giving us this opportunity to rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
After kind of seeing the society of care around Emet, what is possible for a faith community?
Yeah.
And how they can show.
I think that to me, one of the things that not just being part of faith communities, but being part of innovative faith communities can offer is deep creativity and thinking about how to ritualize things that we don't have rituals for.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that there's really something to be said for people grounded in deep connection to, especially for people who are dying, to be there to not hold solutions, but rather to be there to hold witness and to hold presence and to hold space. And I think that is really, that to me is what chaplaincy is not solving, but is being.
Right. I think it was necessary to have people there who maybe didn't know Emet super well, but were open to just sitting and coloring.
Yeah.
And just sharing presence.
Yeah. And I also will say that I think a lot of faith communities have, let's say, people moving skills. of moving people to do things in ways that definitely overlap with community organizing, but I think in some ways can run a little more deeply because in a lot of faith communities, it's not just maybe a shared vision, but it's also familial and partners and friends and children and culture. And there's all these different layers of connection that people have, which can help move them towards offering care.